Have you ever dreamed of swapping city life for the charm of rural Italy? In today's video, I'm going to take you through exactly how I made the leap, from picking the perfect property to the practicalities of moving, and most importantly, why it's the best decision I've ever made. Whether you're seeking adventure, tranquility, or simply a fresh start, I'll take you through everything you need to know to make rural Italy your home. Just a quick intro for any new subscribers. I'm Isabella and I was born in Italy but grew up in Dorset in the south of England. And in 2023 I decided to sell my property and buy my little Italian homestead in Abruzzo, central Italy. So let's dive straight in and I'll explain how and why. So why Italy? Well, I've always felt a very strong connection to my Italian roots, and as I got older I started to feel the pull towards Italy more and more. I wanted to be closer to my extended family and just experience real life there, because as I only spent holidays or special occasions in Italy, I had this very rose-tinted view of it, and I wanted to see what real life would actually be like living here full time. And then when COVID hit, it opened up the possibility for me to be able to work from home, and I decided to seize that opportunity and make the move, because otherwise there would always be some reason why I couldn't. My other key motivator for moving was that I really didn't want to be tied down to a mortgage. I didn't really see the economic situation in England improving anytime soon, and so I thought I'd sell up while the house prices were quite high, and I knew from doing a little bit of research that I would have enough left over to buy a place outright in Italy. So why did I settle on Abruzzo, a region I'd never been to before? Well, there are a few reasons. Obviously, not being tied to a specific area for work really opened up the possibility of being able to search anywhere in Italy that was in my modest budget. If you're thinking of moving but you'll need to find a job here rather than working from home, then obviously you'll need to take that into consideration when you're picking your area. And unfortunately, the cities and the north of Italy will probably have more opportunities for you than the south or central Italy. However, if it's rural tranquility you're after, like me, then there are a number of regions you could explore. There's Umbria, which is just above Abruzzo, which is a very, very green area, lots of wonderful landscapes and very reasonably priced properties. If your budget allows, you could look at Tuscany, which seems to be every person's dream that I've spoken to. But there are some cheaper areas of Tuscany as well, so you might want to look at places like Lunigiana. And then obviously you've got the more rustic landscapes of the south. And then of course you've got the wonderful Abruzzo, which I chose to make my home, which has everything that you could possibly want in terms of nature, from wonderful coastline to beautiful, beautiful mountains. So how did I go about finding my dream property? Well, first of all, I set up a spreadsheet, very me, of all the places I liked that were in my budget, and then made a list of pros and cons, distances from airport, distances from a train station, etc., etc. I used websites such as rightmove.it, casa.it, and a few others which I will link for you below. One thing I will say is that the quality of the photos was generally absolutely appalling, so you couldn't really rely on the photos to get a good idea of the place. And with a couple, I did set up some virtual viewings, but with one agency in particular, they asked me to pay €50 for it, which I think is excessive, and they should be doing that kind of thing free of charge if they want to sell rural properties. If you're worried about your language skills, then I wouldn't worry too much, because most of the agents do actually speak English, and if not, you can always send an email and use good old trusty Google Translate. There are quite a few expats here in Abruzzo who offer services to help you find a house as well. Now, it wasn't really until I'd finished my shortlist that I realised Abruzzo was definitely the region for me. Around 90% of the properties I'd saved that met my requirements were in Abruzzo, and those requirements were that A, it had to have an olive grove and some land, and secondly, it needed to have a separate property for guests to come and stay, or to rent out, or for my mum to come and live in eventually. And Abruzzo was one of the only regions that could offer me that within my modest budget of £70,000. So having settled on Abruzzo, I then started to do a bit more research into the region to find out exactly where I wanted to buy a property. And there were various things to take into consideration, such as, was it in an earthquake zone? And there is a map you can look at, which I will link below, which tells you which are the red zones, the amber zones, and the green zones for earthquakes. And then obviously things like being in close proximity to amenities, public transport, but also making sure I was still very much in a rural community living that slow pace of life. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I'd never actually been to Abruzzo before, but I knew I was more of a mountain lover than a beach lover, so I started looking at those areas, and thankfully they tend to be a lot less expensive too. So instead of just visiting so that I could do my viewings, I decided to make the permanent move first of all. So I set up all my viewings and then booked an apartment, which I rented for a month via Airbnb. And I think I paid around €350 for the month. And then I packed up my trusty Fiat 500 and my little doggy, and we headed to Italy. We arrived in a little town called San Martino sulla Marrucina in February amidst the snow, and I really didn't know what to expect, but people were so welcoming and so helpful in helping me set everything up. And I really think people appreciate seeing new life in these small rural communities. By the end of my first week living in Italy, I'd already viewed and put an offer in on my little Italian homestead, and the rest, as they say, is history. Now, I know it's not the case for everybody, but for me personally, the experience of buying a house in Italy was very straightforward, potentially because I was a cash buyer. I think I had to transfer a small deposit initially to hold the property, and then less than a month later I went to the notary's office with the previous owners of the house, and the notary reads out all of the deeds, you all agree on everything and sign the paperwork, and that was it. It took less than an hour. Right, let's get down to business and talk about the cost of moving to rural Italy. So I'll start at the beginning. I sold my house and then had to put my belongings into storage whilst I looked for somewhere here. So I think I paid around £45 a month for a small unit because I'd actually sold all of the furniture to the buyer of my home. So it was just belongings that I was storing. Then, of course, there was the cost of the actual journey to Italy. I couldn't fly because of the dog, so I had to figure out hotels to stop over in, the cost of petrol, the cost of the motorway tolls, and of course for the documentation that I needed for the dog. So in total, I think that probably came to around £1,500. As I mentioned, I paid €350 for a month's rent, but that did include all utilities, and it was freezing cold in the winter, so that was a really good bargain, I would say. And if anyone wants the link to the Airbnb I stayed in, please let me know. And then in terms of actually buying a property here, I would recommend that you make sure you have 10% extra to cover all the legal fees. In my case, I paid for the agent, and in Italy, I believe both the seller and the buyer have to pay the agent, and she charged me around €2,300 for a property of €70,000, and then I paid £1,000 to the notary. And then on top of that, you need to pay a registration tax, and it varies significantly depending on whether you are going to buy the house as your permanent home or if it's going to be a second home and you'll be resident elsewhere for some of the year. So for me, it was a permanent home, and so I paid the lower rate of 2%, but I believe that goes up to 9% if you're not planning to live there as your primary residence. Then to have my belongings moved over from the UK, I paid £4,500, and I was delighted when all of my stuff arrived, but I have to say by that point I'd already been living in Italy for a couple of months, and anything I needed in terms of essentials I'd already rebought, so I wouldn't recommend actually bothering to move your personal things unless you have things you're very attached to. I think in retrospect I probably would have used that money to just buy newer, nicer things. I was really lucky that the house I bought was furnished, so I didn't need to make any immediate purchases. I could just move straight in. I do think that furniture and household items generally cost more here, and you're much less likely to find things secondhand, so that's something to take into consideration if the place you buy isn't already furnished. Now, the other main cost I had to consider was my car. Obviously with the dog we'd driven over, and I couldn't sell the car here because it's a right-hand drive, and I didn't relish the idea of having it driven back to England to sell it there either, so I had to go down the route of having the number plates changed into Italian ones, which is a very long and very complex process, and unless you have Italian nationality I don't even think you can do it anymore, so you're better off just buying a car once you're here. The whole process from start to finish took 18 months in the end, and I think I must have paid around £2,500. That's between the agency fees and then having to do things like taking the car to Rome to have it customs cleared, having the lights changed so that they face the right direction, and then on top of that I had the cost of transferring my English driving license into an Italian one, which again was quite lengthy and fairly expensive. So that's the practical side of things covered, and now I want to share with you a couple of places I've explored that I think would make the perfect base for anyone moving to Abruzzo. First up, Penne in the Pescara region of Abruzzo. Penne is a lively market town that offers a perfect blend of rural charm and modern amenities. It's an ideal spot for expats seeking a slower pace of life with a welcoming community and everything you need for daily living. The town's bustling market is a hub of activity where you'll find fresh produce, local cheeses, and handmade goods. With cafes, restaurants, a big hospital, and easy transport links to Pescara and Teramo, Penne combines the best of rural living with modern convenience. Penne's rich history is reflected in its medieval architecture, including the 12th century Cathedral of San Massimo, There's also a vibrant art scene with local festivals and lots of galleries to explore. Surrounded by the stunning Gran Sasso and Majella mountains, Penne offers endless outdoor activities from hiking to cycling, making it a haven for nature lovers. Next up, Atri in the province of Teramo. Atri is a historic hilltop town that offers a mix of small-town charm and modern comforts. It's an ideal place for expats seeking a peaceful, authentic Italian lifestyle with easy access to everything you need. Atri's lively piazza is the town's social heart where you can shop for local produce, relax in cafes or enjoy traditional Italian fare like the pan ducale. The town is well equipped with medical services, shops and good transport links to nearby Pescara and Teramo, making it a convenient base for rural living. Steeped in history, Atri boasts stunning medieval architecture, including the impressive Cathedral of Santa Maria Assunta and beautiful palaces. Perfect for beach lovers, Atri is just a short drive from the Adriatic coast. Plus, the town is just a 15-minute drive to a train station with direct links to Pescara, Teramo and beyond. There is also a theatre hosting many cultural events throughout the year. I highly recommend adding Atri to your list for your house hunting journey in Abruzzo. I hope you found this useful, but if you have any other burning questions on moving to rural Italy, then please let me know in the comments and I promise to reply. Also, if you'd like to see what exactly I bought for my 70,000 euros, I will happily make a video, so let me know. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.